Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Corey Davis. I work for Healthy Land and Water as a project officer in the land restoration team. I'd also like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this country we're meeting on today, the Yagara Turrbal people, who are the land managers and caretakers of this country, this region for tens of thousands of years, and also my fellow countrymen in the room today. So many great discussions today and so many wonderful people here doing some great things in this region, and it makes me realise what an important industry I'm a part of. And I'd like to introduce the final session of the day today, which we've called Investing in Our Future Catchment, Making It Happen. And to bring it home, I'd like to invite our CEO, Julie McLellan, back to the stage to talk about the big picture, building the prosperity, livability and sustainability of our future region and our path to delivering impact. Julie McLellan.
Thank you so much. Whew. Everyone's still awake. That's so inspiring. Don't fall asleep in the next 20 minutes and then we'll be able to get out of here. So, look, thank you to all of the panellists. They've all been incredibly inspiring. I'm about to start training tonight for breakdancing because I think I've missed my go in swimming, so I figured it's a new event. So you're doing zombie acting, I'm doing breakdancing. I'm sure I'm going to be able to do it. So I'm just going to wrap up a little bit, if you can indulge me for a little while. You've heard about what we do, and that we know, and that we know, and what we know. So the guys have gone through everything that we do and everything that we know. Stephen mentioned at the start the challenges we continue to face and the evidence that we've collected along the way. Rod talked about the trends and the successes and the importance of that. We discussed the relevance and possibly the need, in my view, it is the need, of the SDGs. And we also talked about what a Green Games will or could look like. My team demonstrated how we can track progress and where to invest with what we are calling Project Future Card. But we know now that the eyes of the world are going to be upon us. And we heard it from both the SDG panels and from the Olympics panel, that this is really, really important time for Brisbane and indeed the region. We know the selling point of Queensland and a successful bid was for that Green Games. This brings with it a prime opportunity to use the Games to leverage a positive legacy for South East Queensland, including achieving enhanced policy delivery, exemplar projects and a climate positive Games. But to achieve that, the conversation, in my view, does need to notch up a bit. So far, we hear a lot about the Green Games and the talk is quite rightly, has been dominated by the reuse or repurposing of infrastructure and existing venues and from public transport. And we also heard a little bit about green boulevards and what's happening in the local sense. But it doesn't go far enough yet. What we haven't defined is what is a true Green Games? What do the regions look like? What attracts people? What's our biodiversity looking like? How are we going to achieve those? What's realistically needed to get us there? I believe that this organisation and all of our partners can actually define this and we can start to achieve it. But as the panel also said, we need to start now. It's no good starting in 2029 and then going, oh, didn't quite make it. We need to start that now and start that planning now. Some of the work, we've talked a lot about what we're achieving in Brisbane and it's highly commendable. But we need to start looking broader afield. So we do really require serious investment and action in our upper catchments. If we look at that green infrastructure solution, such as that restoration, you can see up there, not a restored gully. So the restoration of riverbanks, regenerative land practices and reforestation of gullies and hill slopes. This type of investment, while likely to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, will deliver jobs, food security, increased productivity, not to mention building not only resilience in our communities, but in our infrastructure too. Kate talked about that time that we needed and that need to act now. Investment in green solutions in upper catchments has the added advantage, and I think you heard Andrew talk about it, of actually slowing water down. You know, if you can imagine taking this much off the height of the Brisbane River in a flood event, there are a heck of a lot of homes that aren't going to get flooded. So who benefits from that? Obviously the homeowner, the owners of the infrastructure, insurance companies. You know, these are the sort of people that we need to be talking to now to get them involved in what it actually means. So not only will it have that I guess that benefit of managing built infrastructure and jobs, but also local tourism. You know, travellers now to local economies, we get people into Brisbane. You know, sure, there's the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast, but how do we get them out to the regions? How do we get them out to the scenic rim, to Boona, the centre of the universe, Mr. Chair, apparently. You know, how do we actually start to get people out there and enjoying what we have in the regions and trying the food and engaging in that local tourism? I just want to share with you I guess a touch briefly on the journey that we have gone through over the years. And Rod did talk about this, but it's really exciting. And what I've done in the last, over the, sort of leading up to this, I've been thinking about that 21-year journey. And I wanted to think about how we actually got there. So we knew there was an issue. So we had that burning platform, right? The bay was in crisis, something had to be done. Those frequency of algal blooms, and Rod talked about this, but we understood what needed to be done, but we needed to get that rally around. So we came together, and in my view, it was those efforts of everybody coming together and figuring out, right, we understand what happened, we know what we need to do, we just need to get on to do it. So again, you know, Rod touched on this as well, but we hatched a plan. And that plan was called the South East Queensland Regional Water Quality Management Strategy. It wasn't just a plan though, it had actions in it. It was championed by then political leaders, the Lord Mayor Jim Sawley and Premier Beattie. There was a bit of a competition as to, you know, I do recall, because for my sins I was around, sort of Lord Mayor Sawley saying, well, I'm going to do this, Beattie, what are you going to do? And quite publicly, and so you know, Premier Beattie kind of went, shit, I better do something, but it worked. Okay, you know, I think some people talk about it was a bit of a healthy competition, and it actually worked. So, but it was championed, and what we saw was that investment in our sewage treatment plants that sort of started to lead to achieving this vision. So we demonstrated it worked because we executed the plan. So, you know, as Rod mentioned, we've seen seagrass recovery in southeast Queensland that has not been seen other than in a couple of places around the globe. Now that's phenomenal, and I don't think we celebrate that enough. I don't think we pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we did a good job here. But I guess we've got another platform now. You know, we really have this sort of burning platform that's coming and looming on us. And I'm not just referring to the impacts of climate change and fires. You know, we're exposed to those ongoing and increasing pressures. You can see by the trends in the 21 years of data, increased pressures from land clearing, population growth. They're not going to go away, and they're not, you know, population growth is not necessarily a bad thing, but we do need to start managing for it. People keep coming to our region. We're never going to close those borders. Well, I suppose we have. That's probably, yeah. Let me just rewind a bit. COVID notwithstanding, and apparently they're going to open again soon. But you know what I mean? Like, people are still going to come here. They're queuing up. They're lining in Tweed at the moment, ready to cross that border to come and live in Queensland, in southeast Queensland anyway. You know, we're continuously clearing the ground, to make space. And you know, Andrew and I talk about it, and he says, someone asked one time as well, you know, how do we actually develop without any impact? You know, what do we do? And we sort of pondered about that and says, well, once you decide to develop, there's going to be an impact. Okay, so once you remove that ground cover and those trees, there is going to be an impact. But we can start to minimise that impact. We know what to do, we know how to do it, it's just actually having the will to actually do it. So we can actually do it. So I'm going to pop it out there that we kind of need a new plan. I fundamentally believe that as a region, when we come together and we have a plan and we execute that plan, and I can promise you it wasn't without tears, but you execute that plan, the investment happens, we monitor and track that progress, however that might look like, that works for the community of the day, and we will actually achieve great things. So we've got a 10-year time frame. It's interesting because we talk about 10 years before and the 10 years after. So what we want to do is hit that mid-market 2032, our targets, but we're generating the legacy for the next 10 years minimum, right? We need to go beyond that, but just think in bite-sized chunks. So if we can do that, I think it's set those targets, execute the plan. I actually believe that we can achieve it, and we'll see some great investment. We've seen some good outcomes now. I think we can see more. The Lord Mayor said earlier that when you saw him, that we need to learn from our successes and our shortfalls in the past 21 years. And it turns us from looking back at ecosystem health to looking forward, which is what we're doing with our future card. And that's what that plan can do. We can use that, look back, get that information and use it to go forward. I guess I was just going to finish off on a few points around some of the words from the ministers that were said. So Susan Ley talked about our NRM plan and a true community plan for the region, which links partners together and aspirational targets to deliver the values we define as a community of SEQ, which is what we did before. We partnered together and we were able to deliver some really cool outcomes. Minister Scanlon shared her views on the value again of partnerships. Is there a theme here? Yeah, so I'm just putting it out there to the universe that there are themes. There was a theme around partnerships, there still is a theme around partnerships, and it's incredibly important. And Lord Mayor sort of challenged us with the future and what we want for the region to look like. That could be a plan. So with targets, and people talk about targets and that holds you together. So what we at Healthy Land and Water are starting to do is work with our partners now to consider what we know, what worked in the past, what we learnt from the past, what we need to change, where the science and the evidence is telling us to invest, bringing that all together, creating that plan and actually starting to deliver on it. And it needs to be now. I don't want to be the leader of an organisation that looks back and goes, damn, I wish we'd done it a little bit sooner. So I'm going to leave you. This is a quote I actually saw, believe it or not, in the Women's Weekly, but don't judge. It was lying around in a doctor's surgery. That the actions we choose or choose not to make over the next 10 years will determine the fate of our planet for the next 1,000 years. And I had a photo with it, which I wish I'd saved. And it was this iceberg about this big with a koala. Koalas don't sit on icebergs, they don't like it, they don't like coal bottoms, with a polar bear on it. And the polar bear basically was sleeping in this little crevice, so if the iceberg was this big, the polar bear was that big. And you could knock yourself over with a feather when you see it, it just goes, whoa, okay, we need to act now. And sure, the cynic in me can say, well, polar bears can swim and the rest of the iceberg's probably off to the side, but that wasn't the message. It was a very strong point that you need to act now or something's not going to work in the future. And I think we've got a great opportunity here in South East Queensland. I'm just really, really excited about it, actually.